as I've explained, our theme this week in the first reading seems to be a focus on the messianic promise. And so we're here in what is known as Deutero-Isaiah, which is the second. There are three parts in Isaiah. This is the second part. Begins in chapter 40. We're in chapter 49. It goes up until the mid-50s in chapters. So what we're seeing here is God is explaining to the people, the Jews. And remember, when we're talking about the Jews, the term Jew doesn't appear until Judah appears. Judah is the southern kingdom. The Jews were known previously as the Hebrews, and then they were known as Israel, because the whole country was Israel, and Israel was named after Jacob, who changed his name to Israel. Israel means struggles with God. So then, after the division that happened after King Solomon, you had a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. The southern kingdom was called Judah. And from that point on, the people from Judah or connected to Judah were called Jews. That's where the term comes from. So now we have Isaiah is speaking to the Jews who are now in exile in Babylon. And remember, they were in Babylon for about 40 years. It was a devastating time. If you want to see, as I always like to explain, if you see the way ISIS treated people, then you will have a full understanding of the way Babylon treated those that they captured and brought into Babylon. So they blinded the king. They were vicious. So they brought these movers and shakers as slaves into their kingdom. And needless to say, this is where there was a great lack of hope. There is no hope at the very beginning, because what they're seeing is that their whole culture, their whole religion, their temple, all of which are destroyed. Now, let's be honest. There are a whole bunch of cultures out there, the Canaanites and the Philistines, et cetera, who don't exist today. Now, you can find people who can trace their heritage back to these people, but those nations do not exist. There is no longer a nation of Canaan. The closest thing that we can find anything called Canaan is right over the border from Massachusetts and New York. There's New Canaan, but that's not even close to the same thing. It's not anything. It's just what people who originally came and founded New York decided to call this place. So we understand that here are these people who have lost all hope. Their culture is gone. Their temple is gone. Their religion is gone. And they lived for, several decades as slaves to Babylon, restoring their relationship with God. And from the time they were captured, God says that I'm not giving up on you. Well, here what we see is towards the end of the Babylonian exile, according to the New American Bible Revised Edition. And what we see here is this promise of a messianism. It's a promise that the Lord is going to create a society, and he describes it. And we're gonna look at what this description is in just a second. But he describes this whole reality. Now, the reading today is Isaiah 49, so it's well into Deutero-Isaiah, 8 through 15. So let's look at what it says. It says, now, again, remember that what am I reading here? I'm reading from the Catholic Public Domain version, Catholic Public Domain version, which you can find at sacredbible.org. And remember, why we use that is because the Bible is copyrighted, and we won't go any further than that. It's crazy. But anyway, we're stuck. I'll tell you a little story in the second half that I just heard that would kind of click with this whole issue. So we've got the Catholic Public Domain version. Thus says the Lord, in a pleasing time I have heeded you, and in the day of salvation I have assisted you, and I have preserved you, and I have presented you as a covenant of the people, so that you would lift up the earth and possess the sacred inheritances. So right from square one, God is not giving up on his people, and we're going to see that further down. And the covenant still remains because their mission remains. And the mission is that they are called to, here it says, to lift up the earth. Remember what Jesus says? We are the salt of the earth. We are the light of the world. Remember the discussion between Abraham and God? If there are 10 righteous people, I will not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. So they have a mission, and that mission continues. So that you would say to those who are bound, go forth, and to those who are in darkness, be released. Remember, these people are living bound and in darkness. They're living as slaves. And God is saying, this will end. They will pasture along the roads, and their pastures will be in every open place. The land is going to be fruitful and filled with farmers who bring forth their wares, the fruits to market. They will not hunger or thirst, nor will heat of the sun beat down upon them. For the one who takes pity on them will rule them, and he will give them to drink from fountains of waters. Remember again, this is a desert culture. So that line, he will give them to drink from fountains of waters, is incredibly a powerful line. And I will make all my mountains into a road, and my paths will be exalted. And this kind of brings us over to St. John the Baptist. Make straight your ways. The Lord will make straight his ways. Behold, some will come from far away, and behold, others from the north and from the sea, and still others from the land of the south. This goes back to this prediction that is intense. There will come a time that the whole world will worship the God of the Jews in Jerusalem. Give praise, O heavens, and exult, O earth, lest the mountains give praise with jubilation. For the Lord has consoled his people, and he will take pity on his poor ones. And Zion said, the Lord has abandoned me, and the Lord has forgotten me. Can a woman forget her infant so as not to take pity on the child of her womb? But even if she would forget, still I shall never forget you. You probably have heard that phrase many times. So you can see that here the people feel that they are permanently lost, that God has given up on them, and they come to realize that God does not give up on them, that God gives up on nobody, and so they are given their hope again. And this, of course, clicks very well with what we understand with Lent. It's that time of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, looking forward to what it all is all about, which is to be people who celebrate the resurrection of Jesus and come to understand from the New Testament a whole new reality, which is that we believe in eternal life and we believe that we are destined to this eternal life. So you see, this is a radical difference than what we can recognize from just having a simple understanding, for example, of our faith as nothing more than a moral code. And the people at the time have come to realize that they have sinned so greatly, and now the Lord has punished them. Remember, we talked about this earlier. Prior to this happening, they thought they didn't need God anymore. They thought everything was wonderful, everything was successful, all the wonderful things. Now, there's something to keep in mind here that's important. What does God do for those who have turned their back on him? He takes away his protection. It's kind of like, well, if you think of it this way, the way the earth is set up, that it has an atmosphere that protects us. If God wanted to use that same dynamic in order to send a message, he would make the atmosphere no longer protect us, and every asteroid and meteor and everything else would come and hit the earth, and we know what kind of destruction destruction that would cause. So it's a very similar reality. We know the famous story. We talked about that towards the end of the last liturgical year. The famous story of God turning to the Lord as Assyria was wiping out Israel, and they repented, and the Lord conquered the Assyrian army with a really bad virus. But prior to that, there was no protection because the Lord had removed his protection, and now he's putting it back in. So keep that in mind, because it's not so much that God is going to send curses upon people. That's what the pagans did. God does not intervene. And when he doesn't intervene, then nature just goes its own way. And this is what happened with Babylon. He didn't intervene, and Babylon came in and conquered and took over Judah and wiped out the temple and everything else. And why? Because God did not protect the people. This is an important consideration. God is not going to support people who exalt that which is not God, and put it to you that way. So that's one of the powerful messages that we see here. And now we're seeing the people have come and they've learned their lesson. They have suffered greatly enough that they start to repent, and they start to realize, okay, we need to go back. And then the Lord steps in and saying, oh, your future is better than you could even imagine. So it's some pretty powerful stuff. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We'll be right back right after this. Did you know that the Catholic Audio Media Podcast is available on various podcast platforms? You can find us, among others, on Podbean, which is our home platform. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart, among others. Just look for Catholic Audio Media, all one word. On some platforms, such as Spotify, look for Catholic Audio Media, 3 words, and subscribe and listen to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media, patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer, previews of upcoming podcasts, previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com, your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. I just heard a fascinating story from Professor of Rock, and from his guest on the program, Kenny Loggins. But it really would highlight something that we can look at in kind of a little bit in light of what I was saying, God intervening. Now, whether God actually intervened, we don't know. But there's something that we believe in when it comes to our faith. There are no such things as coincidences. Now, I had talked to you about, we're reading from the Catholic Public Domain version, and the interesting thing is because the Bible is copyrighted, and the Bible that you hear at Mass here in the United States is copyrighted by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops under the auspices of the Confraternity for Christian Doctrine. It's copyrighted. And they have been known to contact people and say cease and desist. Well, turns out there's an interesting story. Apparently, when Kenny Loggins wrote the song, that wonderful song, Return to Pooh Corner, I guess his producer, his manager, or whoever, got a phone call from Disney. And they said that they own the rights to Disney, and he can't publish this song. He can't release this song. And he's, really upset. He says he's 20 years old. He's upset, and he's about to go on a date. And he had no idea his girlfriend at the time was the daughter of the CEO of Disney. And she just immediately, as he describes it, says, "Let me call Daddy." She calls her father, who is the CEO of Disney, explains the story. He plays the song for him later on that night, and he says, "Let it go." And if you know the song, it's a wonderful song. It's got some great arrangements, especially on the on his album. And sometimes you wonder, there are coincidences, but sometimes there's more than coincidences. And, one of the things I was looking for the other day is I says, there's got to be another version, a more updated version of the Bible that I don't have to worry about copyrights with. And sure enough, I found this Catholic public domain version. I found it through a Bible Gateway. And I looked it up and said, what's this Catholic public domain version? I just checked it out. And sure enough, it's public domain. And it does exactly what I was doing before. It takes the Dewey Rams and gives it a modern spin. So you can find it at, let me make sure I have the website correctly. And you can find it at sacredbible.org. So look that up, sacredbible.org. I should find out if he takes donations. If he did, I definitely should give donations to that guy. What a wonderful thing. And, you never know. God will always supply. He always finds a way. This is one of the fascinating things that Canção Nova, the organization that I belong to, really holds to. It's called divine providence. And they really believe that God will provide. And the first time I ever saw this, some of you have heard this story before, but it's still one of my favorite stories. I was with Canção Nova. I was there, and we were covering for Canção Nova News the Pope Benedict XVI, visiting the United States, specifically at that time Washington and New York. So I called them up ahead of time because I'm going to be meeting with them. And I said, where are you staying? What hotel are you staying? And they said, don't worry about it. And I said, well, no, you can let me know. And I can says, no, don't worry about it. Now, remember, one of the reasons that I'm thinking in light of this is I'm from the United States. I'm also a veteran. So I can help them. And, maybe if they need help finding a place to stay, and said, no, don't worry about it. And I said, okay, I won't worry about it. I get down there. They meet me because I don't fly, so I took the train. They meet me at Union Station. I fly occasionally, but enough. And come to find out, someone was selling their house, and whether they bought the new house already, but anyway, they had a house they could lend them for the weekend. Now, remember, the Pope is coming to Washington, D.C. You couldn't get a hotel room for nothing, the expression. You couldn't get it, forget it. There's no way you're going to get a hotel room. And someone gave them, for the weekend, a house, and that became our center and everything else, and they sent the coverage down there and everything. And finally, the Pope finishes. This is so funny. The Pope finishes the whole thing in Washington, and then they have to go up to. Well, we all have to go up to New York. And I said, well, how are we going to get up to New York? They said, don't worry about it. Well, at this point, I've learned that when they say don't worry about it, it means don't worry about it. All of a sudden, we're standing on a street corner. And I said, well, what happens next? They said, don't worry about it. We are standing on a street corner. We need to get up to New York, and we're standing on a street corner. All of a sudden, this guy shows up in a van. We hop in the van. He was someone who watched Canção Nova TV. He's from New Jersey, and he said, if you need a ride from Washington to New York, I'll take you up there. And he lived in Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is right outside of New York City. It's just south of Newark. So here we are, and we stayed in his house. So we had another center, a place to stay while we're covering the Pope in New York. Now, the other thing, this is one of my favorite stories. So anyway, they want a shot. Now, you have to understand Latino mindset. They want a shot focusing in Times Square, towards Times Square, right down Broadway. And there's a place that they decide is the perfect place to stand. What's the problem with it? It's got Jersey barriers, signs, and everything. Do not stand here. And this is where we have to be. Now, you have to remember, in New York, you're supposed to have a permit if you have a tripod. If you have a camera on a tripod, you're supposed to have a permit. We're working with the Latino mentality, which it's a whole different mentality. So there they are. I think maybe they might have gotten around the permit by someone held the camera. But there they were, right? And standing exactly where they shouldn't be standing. I'm scared stiff that we're all of a sudden the police are going to show up and arrest us all. And they get their shot. And the minute their shot is over, these guys come, just happen to be walking by. All right, you know, that New York accent. Hey, get out of here. You know you don't belong. Yeah, move right now. And I'm like, I don't believe this. And they're laughing. They got their shot. And they did all this. Well, I used that same principle when I did a video for them from New York, and it was for a program called Révolution Jesus, which means Jesus Revolution. And it's talking about bringing Jesus. It's not, you know, I know today you have to be careful the word revolution. No, it's not that kind of a revolution. It's a revolution of grace and bringing Jesus into the world and stuff. And so I used the same principle. So we got shots in the subway, we got shots on Broadway, we got shots elsewhere, but I used a camera without a tripod. I used a camera, and since I'm I'm a radio guy, I mic'd up the person so I knew how to connect the audio later with the video. We did that. They used this down in Brazil on Brazilian TV. But we did that. We got these shots of talking about New York and God and Jesus and everything from Times Square. I was the cameraman and the audio man. From the subway, from the World Trade Center. Oh, it was wonderful. They just did some wonderful things. And but it was really funny because a lot of this is based on, look, if the Lord wants us to get this done, we'll get it done. And that's pretty much what happened to Christopher Robin, the story about Return to Pooh Corner with Kenny Loggins. And at the same time, that's how we now have a Catholic public domain version of the Bible. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. Remember to subscribe, to like, to let people know about the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. We'll be right back right after this. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452.
That's 617-297-7452.
617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try.
617-297-7452, 617-297-7452.
Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back. So, you know, one of the things that we understand, and it's really important, is that God actually is alive in our lives. And even when we may feel that and I've dealt with people like this all the time, you know, they feel that they are so bad that God can't possibly love them. And, you know, our message is to say that's not true. And that's one of the messages that we can teach at Mass today, because that comes from that exact same thing in that same attitude that was among the people who had betrayed God. So we look at that, we understand that powerful moment, and it's some pretty great stuff that we can recognize that God is working in our lives. Well, tomorrow is the Solemnity of St. Joseph, so we're going to be talking about that. It's also the day that the swallows return to San Juan Capistrano, California. In the meantime, have yourself a blessed day. Remember to like, subscribe, pass the word, and we will see you tomorrow.
Yeah, you know the real is back. Father Carr Chaplain from the city of champions, dropping daily reflections coming straight from the field. The raw truth revealed for the strong-willed. It's the Greatest Act of Defiance podcast with your host Father Carr, a message built to last. The Greatest Act of Defiance podcast. That's right, the Greatest Act of Defiance. Word up. Word up.
The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.